Okay, hello everybody and welcome to the new episode of Fullfunnel Live. Today we have a different format. So today, instead of let's say conversation where we have one-to-one convo with our guests, we have a really cool opportunity to bring under one virtual roof people who nailed down the way, or let's say the community-led growth, people who are running successful marketing communities. Today we have Stefan Smulders from Netherlands, a founder of Expandi, who runs a community about LinkedIn prospecting, Nick and Arthur from Chili Piper and Alyce, who are running together Revenue Era community, and Katie from Metadata, who is running the demand community. So today, guys, we are going to chat about how to develop a community strategy, right? How to use communities to support your business growth, how to make your people, your community members to be engaged, right? To contribute to your community. So lots of things will be covered. Feel free to ask all of your questions in a Zoom chat. As always, we'll have an opportunity to do like a live Q&A. You can jump in, ask your questions live. You are more than welcome. But before we'll start, let us guys know where you're all coming from. I'm calling from Split, Croatia. Stefan, where are you? Yeah, and guys, share with us in a chat. Yeah, Croatia as well. Boston, UK. Nick, where are you calling from?
I am in Boston as well.
Cool. Arthur.
Toronto, Canada. I did see Morocco there. That's amazing. Congrats on your crazy World Cup success. That was awesome. And I was going to say, Stefan, sorry for Netherlands.
Yeah, that's I enjoyed watching the American games as well. So
yeah, that was a good game.
Yeah, don't tell about Argentina anymore.
I set up memories.
Yeah, I set up a disqualification, so people from Argentina are not allowed to join this meeting. I'm kidding, of course. Katie, where are you calling us?
I am here from not so sunny Lubbock, Texas. So shout out to my Texas folks I see in the chat. Love to have you here. Freezing my tail off this morning. I was telling the guys that I was walking the dogs in 25-degree weather this morning. Ooh. So it was very cold, but it's the joy of having 3 huskies. They love the cold, so just have to deal with it.
Cool. Yeah, we have lots of people from United States, India, Europe, Nigeria. So yeah, again, have an international community here. Love it. So I think that we can kick it off, and I would love, guys, just to ask you one question. So you all run in the communities, right? What was the idea to launch the community? So why you decide to launch it, and what was the strategy? How did you think this community can support your business growth? Stefan, if you can share your story, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, for everyone who do not know me, my name is Stefan. I'm the founder of Expandi, one of the best performing LinkedIn outreach tools. And for the ones who are quite active on LinkedIn, we discovered a couple of years ago when we launched our software that there was kind of a lack in education. Everybody, especially our competitors, they were all pronouncing quite obviously on their websites, 10x here. If you use our tool, then you will 10x there. We will triple your results. And actually nobody was helping people in terms of playbooks and strategies. So actually, straight from the beginning, we try to fill in that gap. And first of all, we use our own LinkedIn profiles, using our own tool, of course, to get some quite interesting results with out-of-the-box approaches. And we started to break down the best performing ones and turn them into playbooks, where we start to distribute all these playbooks. For example, on my own profile on LinkedIn, and we ask people to leave a comment, and then we will send over the guide. That immediately became kind of a huge success, and it was a great feeling that we saw that right, that was kind of a missing piece, and we were very confident in sharing all these playbooks, because They brought us results that included the how, the why, the tactic, the templates, the playbooks, the results, screenshots with proofs of appointments we booked through the fact that we used that strategy. We are also quite active to use the same distribution approach in Facebook groups, and there are quite a lot of Facebook groups related to growth, related to growth marketers, to growth hacking, to strategies. And after we found out that there was actually a huge demand, we started to creating our own group, the LinkedIn Outreach family. And we only let in qualified people we gathered from follow-ups, from all these posts, from all these different types of distribution activities we did. And that helped us quite a lot, to be honest, and mostly to gather feedback, to gather insights, to share as a frontier the best strategies and get feedback from other people who are using it. But it mainly helped to create kind of an army around our Expandi brand, especially in the beginning. An example is that in the early days, there was a huge and a lot of discussions in other communities about which kind of a LinkedIn automation tools would be safer or better or more advanced. And I think the best example on how we managed our community was that we indeed built kind of an army, due to the simple fact that all these other founders, they were always commenting on such kind of a post. Oh, use tool A, oh, use tool B. And I actually never did it, but all the fans and all the early adopters which were in our group, they became our army. They were always Expandi is the best. It's always Expandi. So I think that was, especially in the early days, a huge advantage for us to build a brand, to spread out the word, to rely a lot on trust from all these people. So in the early days, that was mainly the one of the drivers we used to grow organically. So
to summarize, basically creating the place where you can indoctrinate people and educate on your approach of running LinkedIn prospecting. And based on this, these people had a buy-in of your philosophy, so they became brand ambassadors, right? And they were consuming the content in one place and were willing to promote your company later.
Correct.
Yeah. Katie, and your community is like probably comparing to our is pretty new. So what was the strategy behind it?
Yeah, so we're about 5.5, 6 months old, which is pretty great. And why we built the demand community was we really saw a need for a place for B2B demand gen marketers. And of course, there's a few other folks in there. We got some product marketers and a bunch of CMOs and CEOs in there, which is pretty cool. But we wanted to have a place for marketers to come, to learn, to grow, to network, and to help others. And one of the things that we saw whenever we were going through kind of the evaluation process of whether we should do this or not. In a little side story, I wasn't even employed with metadata at the time. And so a lot of this was happening while I was going through the interview process. And I was like, I really hope I get hired because I've spent a lot of time and effort during this. And that would be really uncomfortable if I don't. So it was a very unique thing, just like everything at metadata is. And so as we were going through that evaluation process and chatting with prospective members and learning a little bit more about like where that need was, I mean, it really became very evident for us that we needed to create something. And where it's been so cool is the community is truly community led. We have created core values that our community members voted on and chose which ones we would build off of. I would say 90% of our programming comes directly from requests, as well as votes. So often, and I'm sure all of you, as community builders, you'll have members say, oh, we really need to do this. Or like one member will tell you, everybody wants this, you should do this. And we say, okay, well, who's everyone? Let's figure this out. And because you can't always do every request. And so we put all of that in polls, and we have members vote on things. And so our channel creation, the channel topics, that all came from members. And so it's a really, really unique place where our members have a sense of ownership, I think, on the success of the community and what happens in it. And so I think, of course, community is great to connect and learn from others and grow and all of that. But for so many marketers, we found that having ownership and being proud of something that you're owning may not always be super comfortable in your current organization. And so we kind of build our community in a more familial sense of allowing and encouraging our members to be proud of what they've done. Because it's hard to say, wow, I did a really good job on this. And so one of the ways that we're doing that, we did a 10 days of demand that we're wrapping up tomorrow. And we did a creative campaign challenge where you could show off one of your favorite campaigns and members can vote on how they thought about it. So it's a really unique place. Obviously it holds a very special spot in my heart. And where it's so cool though is, as we talk about community-led growth, all of our prospects and customers for metadata can and are community members, but not all members are prospects and customers. And so it's really unique because we see community-led growth constantly. Andre, I know you've seen it where prospects will say like, hey, we're evaluating metadata. What does everyone think about this in general channels? And I have no say, but I also try and be like fairly brand agnostic and let people talk about other competitors and whatnot. But it's a really cool thing because that's directly affecting our bottom line, because that's brand exposure that I have no influence of. I just create a safe space where they know that my members know they're not going to be sold to and they're going to be taken care of, and I'm there to support them. So it's just a very unique community, but I love it, as you can tell.
Yeah, absolutely. I see a couple of questions, and I know that guys are asking about the software that's you are using, and all of us. I think that it's just pretty obvious. We Revenue Era demand community trenches on Slack as communication platform, and Stefan has a Facebook group. But aside from this, guys, it's not that unique. We all have email marketing software to send newsletters, and Zoom to have this sort of communication. So I think that this stack is, and my honest opinion, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but I feel that stack is really secondary. So you select one platform where you want to communicate with people, right? So they can ask questions, chat, etc. But community is way more than just this the tools, right? The community is also building this relationship. We're engaging with each other on LinkedIn, right? Commenting on posts, sending the messages, sending the maybe sometimes recommendations of prospects to each other. Unfortunately, I didn't have an opportunity to travel to Boston this time, but Vlad, my co-founder, went where he met with Stefan, with Nick as well. So that's the point, right? The community is way more. It's just the way how we meet like-minded people. One question that came to probably to clarify, Vanessa asked, Christina, asked Katie, did you pitch the role to be created, or were they already hiring for a community manager?
So despite what it may look like, pardon my language, I'm pretty much chicken shit 90% of the time. I see people, I know Nick and Arthur, you guys will be like, I pitched this role and now I'm in it, and it's all that scares the daylights out of me. I do not have that type of confidence yet to be like, you guys need to have this and here's why. I don't have that yet, and that's okay. And so they had Gil, our CEO, and Jason had actually reached out to me because of the work I was doing at Clary and what I'd done at Sales Hacker and a few other consulting jobs that I had. And so it was funny though, because our first conversation, Jason said, we're going to build a community and we're launching it in 3 weeks. And I said, well, how long is the hiring process? Because we need to set some understanding here. But I think one thing that made it so different was Jason and Mark, they're outstanding leaders. And one of the things I admire most about them is they very much understand that they may not know everything. And so they were like, we don't know anything about community except we need one and people want one. And we've talked with people and this is what they're saying. Can you make this happen? And I was just like, oh my gosh, I never I'm not, like I said, I'm not a super confident person. And so I was like, wow, they must see something. And, you know, I kind of lean into that and it helped me grow a lot. And so, no, I didn't come to them with the role. But I do think once they brought me in, I said, here's what this really should look like based off of what I've seen, who I've spoken with, and like brought validity to my ideas based off of that. So I kind of got to shape it, but yeah, no, I don't have the confidence yet to pitch myself like that. So, but, and it's okay. You don't always have to have the confidence like that yet.
Yeah. Thank you. And you guys, Nick, Arthur, you're running community together. So I was wondering, like, what was the motivation to join forces, and basically how your communities are supporting your companies, and what's your community strategy?
Ooh, yeah. I mean, I can kick things off if you want, Arthur. So Arthur is a good friend of mine. We've known each other for years now, and so we've kind of traveled similar paths. We were both in sales, then we went to field marketing. Now we're trying to do this evangelism thing. And, you know, there's other pieces there. And so we said, like, everyone turned to community when the pandemic happened. And for me, that was a huge place where I feel like I personally and professionally learned a lot. And it was a great place to ask questions without feeling judged by asking it internally. And I said, you know, hey, you know, there's so many communities out there that are for sales and marketing or RevOps or like a combination of others, that I said, why don't we do one for revenue marketers? And we just, you know, we're not trying to sell anything. It's not like Alyce or Chili Piper is sponsoring these communities per se. We just kind of put it together just to see if there was any interest in. It was a great place for us to kind of start that conversation. And then, you know, I mean, there's definitely plans for a lot more, but I can let Arthur weigh in on that and kind of give his thoughts too.
Yeah. I think what we realized was we were on a similar path. We were having these like awesome conversations. We didn't necessarily, but now that, I mean, demand and the trenches exist. At the time, we didn't necessarily see a way for like people, revenue marketers in particular, to share what they were doing, how it was tied back to revenue. The name really came in from like trying to usher in this new era of marketers that in order to survive, you have to tie yourself to qualified pipeline and close one revenue. It's not enough about just like leads or being sales assistant and making things look pretty. We're trying to like really push forward this narrative. But I think like we had a lot of ideas. And at the time, me and Nick were both sponsoring communities as part of our roles at Chili Piper and Alyce. So it was cool getting these learnings from sponsoring other communities and then trying to understand, hey, what really sticks? What do the community members want? What are people talking about? And that's how we tried to shape it. Now, what I will say is, this is not an easy role. So Katie, props to you. Despite the confidence, it's really hard to like get that engagement. Andre, I think you do an awesome job as well of like really having a community-led focus. And I guess it's a little differently because I know Katie, in your case, maybe like that is your job. This is something me and Nick were trying to do on the side. And we quickly realized, despite all of the experience we had in sponsoring communities and what was good, how tough it was to really run a community day to day. So right now, it's more of a place where people can come and ask questions, but we have surveyed members. We do know what people want to do. I think it is a lot of this show and tell, like you were talking about, Katie, of like, people want to know what other people in their role are doing, how it's working, maybe the mistakes they've made. So we're trying to usher in that new era of marketers so they can share those things and learn from each other and not really have pressure from other companies that are sponsoring the community that are saying, hey, how are my sponsorship dollars translating to revenue? Is this good for me? So I think it's a decision we made very intentionally at first, where we said, look, for us, the sole purpose is how do we get these discussions happening? How do we have people share? How do we have people lead the conversations versus us? And if that happens, then eventually maybe we can go down the path of looking at sponsors. But that was, I guess, a little bit of how we were looking at revenue era. I I think it was cool, like, and we can get into it later on, of just how me and Nick got a chance to use our experience early on. And like, this was something pretty new during the pandemic. Everybody was flocking to communities and everybody was trying to get sponsorship models and seeing what worked and what didn't. And there was pressure internally from us at Chili Piper to create our own community. And my boss at the time actually pushed back and said, you know what? I think there's enough communities out there. I think they're trying to figure it out just as much as we would be. Why don't we create the strategy of cross-community evangelism, understand what types of questions are being held? For us, we're pretty unique in that we actually sell to multiple personas. There's RevOps, there's sales, there's marketing, there's even a CS use case. So there was so much for us to choose from. And it was like, we can't create this community of revenue professionals when so many people have different interests. So how do we align ourselves to these communities that we know our customers and prospects are already showing up to, and how do we support them? And as a result, maybe like have them start to check out Chili Piper and understand what we're all about. So that's the decision we made.
Love it. So one of the takeaways I made, guys, is that we need more people like Katie.
Yes,
That's
Definitely.
100%. But jokes aside, I saw the question also about like how to create the community in, let's say, for the service-based company, right, or in more traditional space. And I would love just to share my experience because I'm probably only one today who is coming from the service space, right? We have we're a consultant company, we have on-demand courses, etc. So my first community, I created it 5 years ago. Like Stefan, I did it on Facebook, and my main motivation at that time was I was running a local ABM agency in Poland when I was living in Krakow. So my main idea, at just one point, I decided, okay, so I literally want to connect with people from the entire globe. I just want to meet like-minded B2B marketers. So my first idea was like the draft idea to create a community which will be called B2B marketers and founders, right? Pretty simple, without saying it's ABM or demand gen or whatever. And I was just going to different communities, and all the communities at that time, probably if you reverse back to 2017, at that time everybody was talking about growth hacking, growth marketing, all of that stuff. So all the communities were like purely about growth hacks. So I was joining this communities and was saying, hey, so if anybody here is working for companies with high ACV products, with long sales cycles, right, and growth hacks don't work for your business, let me know. I want to just create a community for you folks, and I would love to connect with you, right? So if the things like account-based marketing, demand generation are relevant to you, like join my community. So that was the initial idea, right? Later, so I started to engage with more people, met Nick, Arthur, many more folks like across the globe, started to engage with them on LinkedIn. And my point was, like you guys told in the beginning, you invited your customers, your prospects, people from your CRM, and basically combined them in one space. For me, it was another idea. So I was like, I had people who are reaching out to me on Twitter. Some of people are reaching out because we are running newsletter. They are replying back by email, right? Some folks asking questions on LinkedIn. And I was like, basically the idea was like in Stefan's case, I was, okay, so why not creating like a global community where we can communicate. And in our community, we get lots of questions. So basically, but hey, so what if I'm working for like software development company, or what if we like provide automation for restaurants, what to do in this space? And I think that one of the biggest mistakes how people think about the communities is that it's all about digital platform. So if I will create a Slack community, a Facebook group, I will have a successful community. I just need to find some, I don't know, like hacks, incentives to make people engage. But again, the community strategy is basically all about how you communicate with people, something that I shared in the beginning, like we chat on different platforms, we meet online, offline, etc. And even if you're in a restaurant space, I'm thinking about the activities that So my wife, she's an artist, right? And she connects with lots of designers, artists, painters, etc. And these guys, they have a cool event here in Split. It's called Art and Wine. So they gather one time per month at one gallery. So they purchase, everybody brings nice wine, cheese, hamon, all of that stuff, and they draw together, and that's community. And they communicate, and they have just a standalone WhatsApp chat, right, to have ongoing discussion, and that's a fantastic way. So I think you need just to drop out from the digital experience and basically think about what might be helpful for your people, so they will feel they are part of the community. That's one of the takeaways that I have made. But anyhow, coming back to our main point, you guys have super engaged communities. So I would love to ask each of you 3 tips how to make your community engaged. Let's start with Stefan. 3 tips how to make your community engaged.
Purely engaged is sharing content on a consistent way. That's, I think, first of all, quite important. We also qualified upfront to not let everybody in the community, only people who has a demand and actually an interest in the topic. So they needed to fill in a couple of questions before they could join, to make sure that we only let the right people in. Asking feedback on a consistent base as well about, in our case, also our product, because a lot of these users in the community were Expandi users as well. And we try to create video questions to make it a bit more interactive.
Okay, cool. Katie, what are 3 tips you can share?
Yeah, so very similar to Stefan's. We do not let everyone in. I actually, I'm kind of dealing with an awkward situation where I didn't realize that they were a competitor, and this person has messaged me like 3 times being like, can we come into your community? And they're like a direct product competitor, and I've been told they cannot come in because there's, you need to keep some boundaries on certain things. And so it's kind of an awkward situation. I'm like, oh, so weird. Your invite must be lost. So I'm still learning how to navigate some of that stuff. But yeah, we are very cautious. There's a bunch of like consultants that will sign up that we won't let in, just because we don't want to muddle it. Same thing with partnerships. Like, we're trying to be very picky, and Nick and Arthur kind of hinted to this earlier. We are trying to be very picky about our partnerships because we want it to be beneficial. One of the things that we do, like for our webinars that we have with partners in like master classes, is, hey, at the end of the day, whoever watches this, they need to be able to take something home that they can actionably use that day with or without your product. And if that's not the core focus of the conversation, then we're not going to have it at all. And I feel like a school teacher when I say that, but it's worth repeating. And I feel like everyone that's dealt with partners knows that, like, you have to hammer this in because they will take advantage of every situation. And so, like, I'll review slide decks before, and like, we'll do prep calls talking through everything, but just really, it's so important to keep this sanctity in this bubble of a pure relationship within the community and to not muddle it by what's happening. Another thing, we use an awesome tool called Common Room. I'm actually on their free version. I'm a huge fan of Common Room. Go reach out to Mitch Wilhelm. Tell him I sent you. He's awesome. I love him. But they have a function where it shows you your community responsiveness. And as of yesterday, it takes 33 minutes as our median response time for any message. So I think responding quickly, nothing's worse than going someplace genuinely needing help, and you ask a question and no one's in there, and you're like, what do I, like, this isn't helpful and I need this now. And so I try really, really hard to make sure that every single person that has a question, they get a response. They'll always get a comment from me in some form or fashion, whether it's something I can help on, or I'm tagging a bunch of people that can actually help and be a resource to them. So I think those are really the keys for successful engagement, at least in our community.
Thank you. 3 tips from you, Nick.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, for us, like, revenue error wasn't really like, we're not trying to sell anything at the end of the day or anything. But what we realized was people actually love like those AMA style events. So we would bring certain guests on, like we had Chris Walker, along with others. And so it was basically just an hour for marketers to ask questions to people that they want to know. And we could then repurpose a lot of that content back into the community. But we polled the community. We didn't use any software or anything, but we polled the community to see what they wanted to do. And they really enjoyed those AMA sessions as well as like roundtable sessions when they could get together with, 10, 15 other marketers and talking on a specific topic. And I used to run these personally for field marketers. It's probably been like a year or so now, but like once a month, I would have, 30, 40 field marketers, and we would get together and we would just talk about different topics around field marketing. Again, nothing to sell. It was just a great way to share best practices, lessons learned. And I think that's a great way to convey value to your members. And I think it's a great way for you to organically grow the community from there, using that method.
Thank you. Arthur, anything that you would like to share?
Yeah, a lot of points are similar. I'll just dig a little bit deeper. So feedback is huge. And I think like one thing I wanted to like tack on to even Katie's response was the community managers, the good ones at least, know what their community is talking about and know what's like very top of mind. So if you're a sponsor, lean into that. Of course, you're going to have like, you're spending dollars and you're trying to like make sure, but this is so short-sighted. You really have to understand the problems and the opportunities that are in the community, and then try and find a thread of maybe the problems that you solve. But it can't be a product pitch. Really, like, it's a place where people are coming to ask questions and not have the only answer be, oh, our tech solves that. They actually want to hear how other people are doing it. So I think even like your responsibility as a sponsor is to really have that conversation. Andre, I think you're a master of this too. You, like, when we approached about Chili Piper sponsoring some full funnel events, you knew what exactly your audience wanted. They wanted these tactical examples and like screenshots and flow charts so they can actually see something and be like, oh, I can take that back despite us using the product or not. One thing I will say in terms of the feedback of community members, I think there's an opportunity to take this a layer deeper. So if you're running polls, if you're running surveys, really look to that DM one-to-one to say, hey, tell me more about this. Hey, you voted for this option. Tell me a little bit more. People want to share why, or maybe the idea they had. And that's really where you're going to get a ton of gold of like, oh, I see how you're looking at this. And then you can start to make the links between, well, if this community member who's actively engaged is asking for this, probably a good chance that other community members are thinking that too. So I think there's an opportunity to go layer deeper and engage one-to-one and say, hey, tell me a little bit more about that. That was really interesting. How are you thinking about that? How do we incorporate this? And then another point I think Katie mentioned of like tagging certain people. We did that approach as well. I guess the big caveat is like, one, making sure that they're okay being tagged. We tried to identify who our Chili champions were within these communities. So it's not as much as we're responding maybe to, hey, who uses Chili Piper, or this or that. It's more a community-led effort of, hey, we know some of our champions exist in this community. One, are they willing to share their experience and join these threads? Maybe this is next for the topic of incentive, but in some of those, we did actually get them in our partner rev share program to make sure that they're getting something out of it too. And it's not just their goodwill. So I guess going a layer deeper, making sure that you have permission to tag your champions within a community, they're always going to have way more credibility than if it was you. And then I was just going to say, find a way to highlight your members. I think people like to be recognized, and whether it's a show and tell or just, hey, the most actively engaged member, like, let's give it up for this person. They're going to want to lean in even more if they're recognizing that their efforts within the community are being recognized. So those are my 3 tips.
Love it. I would just share, just don't want to tell the same things that you guys just shared. I would share probably a couple of things that I found worked for our community. One of them, I was thinking about the podcast, like everybody in our space in marketing runs, I assume, run or plan to run a podcast, right? So I was thinking, okay, how can I leverage and make it more valuable for our community instead of, going to LinkedIn all the time and teaser people sharing, hey, this is the clip, and then go and listen to the full episode here. I was thinking, how can I leverage community? So then I was using the feedback loop that you have mentioned. So people asking these questions, right? My main point was, if I have expertise in that space, basically my expertise is in account-based marketing, right? I could publish a post on LinkedIn and see if it resonates with people. So if there are lots of comments, questions, engagement, etc. And if yes, then I hosted a podcast on that topic where I can print more actionable, like it's like kind of podcast / AMA / webinar, right? So people could learn from that session, and it would be super practical. Or if there is something that is related, I don't know, like to the area which is not my core competence, let's say how to create content engine for B2B company with high ACV. So I brought Amanda from Spark Toro, right? And then we had a very practical podcast. And now I'm bringing people, I'm collecting all of the questions from the community, and I'm saying, hey, so we're going to cover this and that. What are other questions that you want guys us to cover? They share it, right? And then they come and they get a comprehensive, like, kind of comprehensive event that covers all their questions in depth, right, and provides lots of insights. Another one, and I saw that you mentioned this in the chats, what worked for us, obviously, before COVID, we did a couple of events in Europe, then COVID, and this year we plan to do way more, but so far we did one in Boston and one in Valencia in Spain this year. And again, it's all about meeting with your people, right? Meeting live. And you guys know that the relationship that you can build when you meet face to face, it's completely different experience than just the virtual one. And this is how you can, we can talk a lot that we need to, we can incentivize people, right, to be more engaged, to become community ambassadors. But I believe people become ambassadors when they see the value and when they get personally connected with people inside the community. It changes the things drastically. So I saw a couple of questions about the metrics, and I think Esther is here. She asked in the community, so how do you guys measure the success of your community? Maybe what are the metrics you are tracking, and how do you measure the success of your community? Stefan, let's start with you.
Yeah, to be honest, I'm kind of more early stage startup founder, so with the growth hack mentality. So especially in the beginning, I was not tracking that much, activities. To be honest, I was more focused on be visible, be there, but especially, and I think Arthur nailed it perfectly fine at that point, is giving people attention. So for example, if new people joined in the beginning, I was recording a 30-second video message, and I send it through DM to build a relationship and ask them a couple of questions, so that I started gathering and building more a bond. And I think up to around 1,500 people in the community. Now we are close to 3,500. It was doable, but yeah, if 10 or 20 people joining each and every day, yeah, then it's not realistic anymore to record such a personalized video messages. But especially in the beginning, that helped definitely to keep the engagement high, to involve people, but also tagging people, as Kate also mentioned, and ask opinions, to participate or to comment on a specific topic someone brought up. I think that were for us the main contributors to engagement.
Thank you. Katie, what are your metrics and how do you measure the success?
Yeah, we track a lot of things. One of the things that's super important to me, I know like tracking engagement in membership and super users and active members, all that's really important. I like to track our disengaged members. While it's really important for us to build these relationships with our power users, there's always going to be a large portion of your community that are not power users and may come in once every few weeks, every few months, kind of depending on where they are in their career or their life, wherever. And so I like to check on re-engagement campaigns often and seeing what the conversion for those re-engagement campaigns are. Because while it's easy to get into one of those echo chambers of, oh, all these community members are so happy and they're so happy with what's going on and they're volunteering and they're loving the programming. There's always going to be a large percentage that isn't. And so it's really important to get their feedback and make them feel welcome and try and convert them to become a happy member. And so really keeping an eye on that, that's really important for me. To show my value to my company, community influence pipeline, community influence renewals, being able to say, hey, our prospects who join the community at this stage in the buyer's journey are X amount more likely to become customers than those who don't, is huge. So those are the things that I'm actually starting to build out reports and try and track a little bit better now that we've been here for almost 6 months. We've got a good baseline. It's based off our buying cycle and how long that is. And so that's really important to me. I come from a sales background, and so I know, hey, if I'm going to be here, I have to make money somehow for the company. And so getting that influence pipeline and influence renewals is really important.
And I'm just wondering, so do you have kind of self-attribution measure, and people like they are mentioning that they're coming from your community? And aside from this, the second question, are you tracking, let's say, the sales cycle lengths, or like, let's say, does community help to accelerate the sales cycle?
Oh, for me? Yeah. Absolutely. I have a couple examples in my head that always pop up when this question's asked. And it's really, prospects will come in, they'll say, hey, here's the tools we're using, here's what we're evaluating, what do y'all think? And I'm able to go into Salesforce and see, oh, well, they're in the stage 4 discovery, they're in this process, whatever. And I know 100% because I have that relationship with many of my members where they say, this is where we're at, that they're like, the feedback from these 3 current users of metadata absolutely convinced me that I needed to use this. And so I screenshot the heck out of it and I send it everywhere internal. And I'm like, send everybody to the community, please. This can happen. But with attribution, a lot of it's, I mean, Nick and Arthur will have their own opinions, I'm sure, on attribution, and that's a whole nother conversation for another day. But I do believe that attribution is never going to be perfect. And whether it's them being in the community, them attending a community function, them asking a question in the community, one of those could be the straw that breaks the camel's back to get them to buy our product. And so it's fairly hard to 100% accurately tell, but that's going to be attribution regardless, I think. So whenever it comes to like how you measure it, last touch, first touch, whatever you do. I know a lot of people are doing like custom attribution models, which once again, totally different thing. But whenever I track it, I'm seeing like, are they engaging in the community? Are they active members? I'm about to start using a tool called TalkBase that's going to help track whether they're attending events, if they're new to events, if they're not community members, but they're attending events. And then hopefully I'll have that integrated with HubSpot and Salesforce so I can track attribution on that side too. So.
Cool. Thank you.
A lot.
Yeah, a lot. That's indeed true.
Pure value.
Yeah. Nick, share with us, please. How do you measure success and the metrics and also the attribution?
Yeah, I mean, so, and Arthur can correct me if I'm wrong, but for revenue error, like we're not really tracking anything, honestly. Like it's a side hobby for us. It would be nice if we could have someone run that day to day for us to make it a lot more active, but we don't have any money to pay anyone. So if anyone wants to do it from an intern perspective, let us know. But we at Alyce, we actually sponsor a few communities. So we sponsor 2 sales communities. We sponsor 2 marketing communities. And so in exchange for money, we have the fortunate benefit of giving a gift barter. So we give these communities X amount of dollars that they can then use for their community members to do that. And then it allows us to just kind of, be a part of that communication. And we're not, we just went through a restructure maybe a month or so ago. And so marketing is down to 4 of us right now. So we're stretched pretty thin. And it's community as important as it is for right now. It's we're still sponsoring these communities, but we're not measuring it as much as we probably should be, because there's a million other things that we're trying to get through too. And with a small team and limited budget, we're shifting things there. But it definitely influenced pipeline was a huge piece of it. The engagement level, and we use self-reported attribution as well. So we actually saw multiple huge opportunities come in that closed that specifically actually came from a few communities that we were partnering with. So I'm a big believer of it. It's just, we'll see what 2023 brings.
Thank you. Arthur, anything to add?
Yeah, I'll take the approach from the communities we sponsored as well. So maybe I'll add in things that we were looking for in terms of determining whether it was a good community to sponsor in the first place. So we were looking at how many threads were started by the founder admin versus truly being community led. Like Katie mentioned, anytime that was a little bit of a red flag in terms of you're trying to manufacture this community through questions. And I still think it's a good strategy, but it was very clear to us that this was a strong community when the actual questions and topics that were being discussed were coming from community members. We were looking at things at how many responses per thread they had to see if a question was posed, do people answer, different things like that. We also asked for them to do a keyword search on whether it was industry, scheduling, chili piper, how often that popped up. And that slowly started to tell us okay, this seems like it's a pretty engaged community. It sounds like we're getting mentioned in this community. This is a good sign for us. I think this is really interesting in terms of how community will evolve, because I think a lot of people were figuring out on the fly. People flocked to these communities because they wanted to feel engaged, and we could only do it online. And then they really quickly grew. And of course, companies were like, oh, our buyers are in these communities. How do we extract them for revenue? So I think it was very transactional at the beginning, and maybe on some end still is. It's hey, if you sponsor this community, you get 3 webinars. We're going to share with you lead lists and different things like that. So early on, what we would do is simply upload those lead lists, tag them to a Salesforce campaign, and try and track throughout the journey whether or not they actually ended up in qualified pipeline or closed won revenue. And we also wanted to give this basically the entirety of our contract come renewal time, where we would do a retrospective and say, okay, we've uploaded a certain amount of leads into our system. How have they tracked through to close won revenue? And that helped a little bit with our renewals, whether or not we're going to continue on. But I think over time, what we realized was this is a two-way street. And I think this is just as important for community managers as sponsors, really understanding what both parties want. I know in some communities, they had a paid sponsorship model. And what we actually did was say, hey, anybody from our events, if you think they'd be a good member, we're willing to pay for their fees if you're willing to lean into some of our initiatives. We really took the approach of creating this, doubling down on in-person events and almost using that as an extension for some communities that, again, didn't have the resources, but wanted to have these events. We'd say, cool, we're having one in San Francisco or in Boston or in Chicago. Do you have any members in the area that you would like to invite to? So success looking at it from a successful perspective was almost just as much as how willing that community was to make it a two-way relationship, understanding what was important to them, but were they leaning into our own initiatives? And maybe this came from the sales background in terms of negotiating what was important to us, but I never took a community sponsorship contract and said, great, I can't wait to pay for this. I said, cool, I like some of these things. These are some of the initiatives that we're working on. Do you see any value in that to your community members to really try and create that two-way relationship? So I don't know, I guess a little bit of metrics there, but a little bit of like qualitative, that relationship feel of how willing is that community to lean into some of our own initiatives that we really wanted to push.
Yes,
Arthur,
thank you.
Is it okay if I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Okay, sorry. Arthur, I'm just very curious whenever you talk about like the qualitative stuff, how were you able to take that back to the executive team to show that it wasn't a waste of money? Because so often, executives are like, oh, we love this in theory.
Yeah.
So we're spending $6,000 for you guys to go get drunk at a bar hanging out with your friends. So it's like, how do you prove that? I'm just curious.
Yeah. One, I think we sponsored so many communities that we almost like could compare them to each other and say like, okay, this one we really didn't get a lot. So we almost had like a baseline of communities let's not touch, and then almost stack rank them based on certain things. We also knew, to the topic of attribution, that not everything was coming through. So we were lucky enough to have our founders really buy into that. They knew that this was the right play and we didn't have to justify everything. And being kind of on the pioneering front of sponsoring communities, we knew that it was going to be a work in progress. So a lot of the time it was just even sharing anecdotes of like, hey, we did this with this community and this is actually what it resulted in. Or, hey, they really like drove 10 people to show up to one of our events. And it became more of that conversation. So I guess on one hand, we were pretty lucky. I think we kind of stack ranked them compared to it. And also knowing what was important to our founders, we would kind of like tell them, hey, this discussion was being had, or we had an event and this seemed to be very top of mind, and almost using that to maybe inform or give them feedback into how people were thinking about our positioning or our product. So trying to understand even what's important to the stakeholders and reporting back to that versus being like, hey, 300 people showed up to our events. And they're like, cool, I don't care about MQLs. Like, did that drive pipeline? Or, okay, what types of questions were they asking? Did that answer, Katie?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I was just curious because I think it's something all of us try and figure out, how do we make sense of it sometimes. And I think too, with like the sense of community and how strongly that affects everything in a community set, like the sense of community affecting community sense, but like people belonging, that sense of belonging affecting everything we do in community. And it's like, how do you quantify that? How do you put that into numbers? And that's something I'm constantly thinking about. So thank you.
And part of it was like that initial scoping out of the community to at least determine from a baseline of like, are the right type of people in here? If we knew it was, whether it's demand gen marketers or RevOps, and they're actively engaged and our brand is coming up, then it's like on us to make sure that we're creating content, we're engaging with them in a valuable way, rather than like, oh, that community isn't good. We know they already had like prospects and customers talking about cool things, key problems that we solve. So then it's like, it's not on us whether or not it was a good investment. It's how do we get creative to like understand a little bit more about their problems, create these rooms or opportunities for them to discuss, put our customers in there with some of our key prospects and see if it would happen organically.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Love it. Actually, guys, I would love to give you one more perspective. Again, coming from the, let's say, service-based business, right? From that side, also look at account awareness and account penetration first. That's really crucial. This comes from ABM motion, obviously, right? So first, we don't look like, hey, are these people active or no, but we look, okay, so we have one account in our target list that is common. We saw this company, let's say, hit a specific engagement threshold, and this company fits our ICP, right? So we start more actively engaging with this company, personalizing the approach, content for them, etc. But then what we are looking, let's say we have a marketer, doesn't matter what's the role, right, in our community, and then they start adding their VP of marketing or head of marketing or content marketer, etc. And for us, it's just, what does it mean? That the content that we provide, this is like an, if we all love to use dark social, etc., we can call it dark feedback, right? So these people basically provide us indirectly the feedback that they enjoy our content, and they start bringing more people from their company. So these people can see our content, right? For us, that's fantastic because we have seen it's one of the metrics that influences the demand cycle. So these companies come to us because more and more people become aware of full funnel indirectly because we are not pushing, right? And we don't use our community as well. We never promote ourselves, right? But they see the responses, they see the events, they see the articles, the content, etc. And obviously, the more people and the more senior people consuming that content, the higher are the chances that will generate an opportunity with that client. And also what is really important in this case, I saw a point about lurkers, right? And Katie, I believe, nailed it down. So not everybody will engage in your community. Like just imagine, so let's say if we'll print Jason, right, or Mark from Metadata, or anybody else, or Alina from Chili Piper, right? So you can't expect that they will be sitting in your Slack and replying to all the messages all the day long. No chances, right? So the same for me. I wish I totally relate to what Nick and Arthur told. For me, it's like a side project. I try to keep it going, but I can't allocate more than like 40 minutes per day to, to be engaged and to be present in that community. But I use this 40 minutes and try to help as much as possible. But again, the fact that you have senior people in your community and they are not engaged, it doesn't mean that nothing happens. One of the things that we all probably, one of the takeaways for 2022, right, is that the buying journey is not linear and that nothing happens. That basically that there is no engagement doesn't mean that nothing happens. It happens. So you need just to look at it from other perspective, from other angle. So we have a couple of questions from Esther. She is a long-term Trenches community member, and I promised to ask these questions. But before we'll ask these questions, guys, so we had like around 70, even 75 people in the middle who were listening to us live. Share, please, in the Zoom chat feedback. How did you like this roundtable? Was it insightful? Did you learn something new? You can share your favorite emoji or whatever, type +5 fire, or just provide the feedback. Would love to hear. We'd love to see your feedback in the chat. Share with us, please. Yeah, good stuff. Thank you. Probably the easiest way, you can just type your favorite emoji, and that would be cool. Share with us, how did you like the event? Cool, loved it. Thank you. Thank you so much. So I would go to the questions that Esther asked, and one of them is, do you pull community members from marketing campaigns and sales motions unless they're an open opportunity? And how do you safeguard community members from other GTM motions? So if you guys can quickly share your experience.
I missed the question, Andre. Can you?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, go.
Yeah, just a second. I will repeat it. So, boom, just scroll down. Do you pull community members from marketing campaigns and sales motions unless they an open opportunity? And how do you protect community members from other go-to-market motions?
So for us, unless they're already in some type of a stage, they're not going to be getting anything. Like our community member lists don't get touched unless they're already in a stage or they've already been identified as a lead. So like I was saying earlier, all prospects and customers are or should be community members, but not all community members are or should be prospects or customers. So we keep that like pretty, there's no gray area on that. Once again, I do everything I can to try and keep the bubble of a pure relationship with our members. So that way they're not going to be tainted with sales motions and being bothered by SDRs. So yeah, that's how we kind of handle it. It's not meant to be like a true go-to-market motion necessarily. However, we do have folks that say, oh, we're really interested in this. And then I'll message them and say, hey, I saw your post. Are you comfortable if I make an introduction for you with so-and-so? And then it's up to them. They have every right to say, no, I changed my mind. That's okay. Or, well, I just want to know about this. And I'm totally fine with relaying that and being a part of that process too. And so that's how we kind of keep track of that.
Thank you, Arthur. I think you have a lot of experience with this.
I don't know if I'm understanding the question correctly, because like I get how Katie would answer it, being it's their own internal community. I think for us, I don't know, people like go to these communities to engage in discussions, not to be pitched. So maybe it can like be a good signal. I would never almost engage them directly in that. I would try and maybe use it in an email or LinkedIn, but like nobody likes to be like, hey, I saw the question you asked. My product solves that. Like everybody's saying that. And it's like you're missing the point of why people are showing up to communities. It's not a channel for you to be like, haha, look, I found a prospect that like I can sell to. It's more about how do you join the conversation, or maybe use something from that conversation that sparks an idea, or maybe a resource that you want to share. So be an extension of that conversation versus trying to monetize that conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And basically before launching the community, do you have this alignment with executives and with sales?
Absolutely.
I think that's one of the key points, right? Just to have this right mindset and have this alignment. Okay, so we're not going to abuse our community and just leverage it in our own way, right? Because otherwise you'll just destroy the experience.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, you should have executive sponsorship from day one. I mean, if it's a community built by a company, like it really should have that. Here's a great situation. I just had a call with our VP of sales a couple weeks ago, and he's like, we really need some help with deal acceleration because everybody needs help right now. And he's like, we should do a webinar on how customers are using metadata for the community. And I said, love it, not going to happen. And he was like, what? And I said, we can do that for our customer channel in the community. We're not going to promote it for the whole community. I think we should promote it to prospects because it may help them close the deal faster because they can see how other people are actually using the product and not be influenced by sales saying, oh, here's a customer to talk to that we've already handpicked and we know 100% that they're going to say all the right stuff. I was like, but this can't be a community conversation. I said, instead, you know, we could have customers who we like come and talk about ABM best practices. And if it so happens that they mention that metadata is a great tool for them, just like LinkedIn, just like Google, whatever, then that's awesome. But that's not, the goal isn't necessarily like business bottom line, every single thing. You can't do that. And so we kind of had to have a little like, love it, not happening. Thank you. Thank you though. And I think in the long term, he'll respect me more and our community will thrive better because of gatekeeping like that. And so, but yeah, you have to have that executive sponsorship. And as soon as I had that conversation, I went to Jason and a few other folks and I said, in case this gets brought up again, do I have your support? Knowing that like I can say no to this and not get fired. And so that executive sponsorship is just like quintessential to anything, you know, I mean, it's so important. So
love it. And Nick, you did like a couple of cross sponsoring, right? So you also like you have access to some community members that are attending the events, etc. So basically how you're leveraging this and how you protect this, let's say, community members from direct, let's say, outreach.
Yeah, I mean, I don't pitch anything. I mean, if you look at 99% of the content I create on LinkedIn, I don't even mention Alyce. It's up to you to figure that out yourself. Like click my profile. And if you're interested, cool, we can talk about it. But if it organically comes up, like that's cool. But I just think about like the reason, you know, that a lot of these work out is the backlinks, the SEO, like how it all, you know, ultimately plays together without me having to talk about it at all. Now, if you want to ask a question around gifting or direct mail, I'll give you my insights. I mean, I've been a field marketer that has used gifting platforms for 7 years. I've used almost every single one of them. So I can give you my insights on what I think. But I'll never pitch you. I'll never give your contact. I don't even like, I'll do events and stuff and sponsorships and they give me like lead lists and I don't even do anything with them. I'm just like, cool. I don't upload them, or anything like that. Probably a miss on my part, but, I just thank people for coming.
Yeah, cool. Well, guys, I think that was like a brilliant conversation, and considering all the feedback I have seen in the chat, that was like super insightful. So again, thank you all for coming and sharing your experience. What I can wish, so like almost we have like in a week we have Christmas, so I wish you guys continue rocking with your marketing and your business, with your communities. So I wish that community-led growth will boost your pipeline and can help you to hit your targets in 2023. But aside from this, be healthy and keep rocking. And I think that I will see all of you next year. I wish in person, but virtually that's 100%. So guys, for everybody, Merry Christmas and see you in 2023. Cheers. Take care. Thank you so much for coming.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.